Hello, I'm going to show you how we do quick readings with vibrational astrology. A quick reading is where we enter the birth data for the person and we immediately start interpreting the chart. And we also only maybe have 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at most to come up with some information, or maybe we want to get some important information about the person almost immediately within a minute or two. And that's what a quick reading is. So this is exciting. The fact is that you can immediately start finding out what some of the most important, powerful driving forces in a person's life are. You can just jump right into it. And there are 3 steps. And on this slide, I have the 3 steps. 1, 2, 3. There's also a step 4. And down here, steps 5, 6, 7. Those additional steps are if you have more time. This is the first video in a series of videos on doing quick readings. And in this video, I'm going to show you the essential 3 steps. You must do these 3 steps. Otherwise, you might be missing something so fundamental that you're missing the basic story of the person's life. We don't want to do that. We want to find really important driving issues in the person's life. And these are the 3 steps. Number 1, we're going to look at something called direct midpoint structures. If you're not familiar with that terminology, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you this in a moment. I just want to have you hear the terminology so that you're not surprised as I go through this. So this is what the 3 steps are. Something called direct midpoint structures. Step 2 is to see what vibration those midpoint structures in. So the first 2 steps are analyzing the midpoint structures. Step number 1, what are the important direct midpoint structures? And I'll explain in a minute what orbs we use and all those little details. And number 2, what vibration they're in. And we want to get beyond the basic vibrations, at least up to about the 64th harmonic. So sometimes I use the word harmonic and vibration interchangeably. So there are vibrations in the chart, and they go up into the many, many hundreds. And we want to see what vibration up to about 64, or preferably even higher, that these midpoint structures are in. And then step 3 is we analyze harmonic charts 8, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and 17. If we don't have time, you can stop at 11. Or you could stop at 9. Better yet, to be able to get up to at least 11 to make sure you've gotten the really basic important things in the person's life. Now, how are we going to do all that in 5 minutes? Analyze midpoint structures, vibrations of the midpoint structures, and if I go up to harmonic 11, that's 5 harmonic charts. The reason we can do it so quickly is that the harmonic chart patterns are visuals. You just see the lines drawn in the wheel. So you don't have to go through a lot of listings of detailed information. So you can actually do this very, very quickly. So let's do it. Let's start with step number 1 for somebody's chart and find out what is really important in this person's life. Now, by the way, before I start, you've probably noticed something. What about the rising sign? Rising sign is very important. I don't see rising sign. I don't see sun sign. I don't see moon sign. I don't see the ruler of the ascendant. Those things are important, but believe it or not, they're down here in step 7. Is that we believe in vibrational astrology, and we've got a lot of research to support this, that these fundamental patterns, these vibrations in the chart, are the most conspicuous and obvious things in the person's life. And that's what we look at first. I know it sounds bizarre to a lot of astrologers because midpoint structures are widely considered to be of secondary importance. Most astrologers don't even use them. And I'm putting them here as the most important thing. Am I crazy? No, this is what we do. Okay, so let's give it a try. So here's a chart of person AB. I just took the first 2 letters of the alphabet. Born on May 4, 1949 at 7:40 a.m. in Brooklyn, New York. And she said it was fine for me to use her chart for these videos. So let's do it. Let's look at the direct midpoint structures. Now, there's the chart wheel. I just entered it before I started the video and entered her birth information. She's got 15 degrees Gemini rising, etc. But let's go right to the midpoint structure. So I'm in the Series 2.0 software. I'm going to click on midpoint, And then select midpoints, view change settings first. And you want only conjunctions and oppositions. You do not want squares, semi-squares, etc. So that's why this is called direct midpoint structure. Conjunction and opposition means that one planet is directly in between two others. It's direct, it's right in between them. And we're going to set the orb to 1.5 degrees. So 1 degree, 30-minute orb. Why are we leaving out squares, semi-squares, and also planets? We're not including the ascendant midheaven or any asteroids. We're not even including the node. Are they unimportant? No. They are important as well, but we're leaving them out because this is a quick reading where we want to find out the most essential, most powerful, most important things in the person's life. And these are the most important. And also, we cannot really include the ascendant midheaven because if the birth time is off 5 or 10 minutes, the orbs of the change so quickly that we don't want to include something that may not really be there, so we have to leave those out. Over here is midpoint listings. I'll leave this checked. We're not really going to use that. Let me click OK, and this is what we see. I'm going to stretch this out. I'll stretch it out beyond the area that you can see, but the midpoints are visible, so it's bigger so you can read this. Here are the midpoint listings at the bottom. We don't care about that. We just care about this. And we see 3 things. 1, 2, 3. They're called midpoint trees, and they have orbs. Do you see any with under 1/2 degree orb? Because if the orb is under about 1/2 degree, it's so powerful, it will be a major theme in the person's life. It'll be something that they should be doing. 80 to 90% of the time they are doing it. It's a big part of their lives. If they're not doing it, there's something dysfunctional going on. There's some kind of psychological problem, energetic problem. Things are not flowing right. And there will be something dysfunctional. There'll be some anger or some other problem as a result. So these are major forces. Do you see any that are really, really strong? Yes, obviously this one, Venus at the Mercury-Mars midpoint, 10 minutes. So I'm saying this will be a fundamental drive in her life. And to get a visualization of it, and not just for teaching purposes, but during your interpretation, this can be helpful, is to click on the pop-up wheel. So there's a chart wheel, her birth chart. And just to see it, there's Venus at 18 degrees Taurus, Mars at 3 degrees Taurus, Mercury at 3 degrees Gemini, and it doesn't look like Venus is directly between Mercury and Mars. I mean, visually it doesn't look like it because 4 planets were squeezed into the 12th house, but actually 3 Taurus to 18 Taurus is 15 degrees, right? 3 plus 15 is 18. And then 18 Taurus plus 15 brings us to 3 Gemini. So actually Venus is 15 degrees from Mars and it's 15 degrees from Mercury. In fact, it's very close to being exactly 15 degrees from both. So there it is, Venus in between Mercury and Mars. Now whether it's 15 degrees or 16 degrees or 20 degrees or 80 degrees or 100 degrees, right now we're not concerned about that. It's just the fact that Venus is directly between Mercury and Mars, creates a resonance in her chart. Those 2 angles are the same, and it's a resonating system, Venus, Mercury, Mars. Now, I have a series of videos on the meanings of the planets and planetary pairs. And if you refer to those meanings, you can mix those 3 meanings of those 3 pairs. In other words, mix the meaning of Venus-Mars, of Mercury-Venus, and Mercury-Mars, the 3 possible pairs. So in a Venus at Mercury-Mars, you have Mercury-Venus, Venus-Mars, and Mercury-Mars. And it's not that important which planet is in the middle. What's most important is that it's a Mercury-Venus-Mars combination. So she is a Mercury-Venus-Mars person. That is one of the most fundamental things about this lady. And again, you can watch those videos on the meanings of the planetary pairs and just combine them together. What I say in that video is Mercury-Venus is verbal intelligence. So we know she's a verbal person. a high verbal IQ person because she's a Mercury, Venus, Mars. And Mars, she wants to achieve something with it. She's got Mercury, Venus, and she wants to get somewhere with it. What do people with Mercury, Venus, Mars do? They're eternal students. I mentioned that with Mercury, Mars, always wanting to learn. And Mercury, Venus is about real life. I emphasize that in the interpretation, that most of what we do in life is Mercury, Venus. When we're looking at, say, a house, or how to design the house, or how to get furniture for the house, or we're looking at our yard, or a garden, or a movie, or a story, we're talking to someone. Most of life is not abstract mathematical formulas or something like that. It involves Mercury and Venus. So she is a person who will always be learning more about so many topics, whether it's literature, movies, how to make things, how to write something, how to communicate something, how people make things, because Venus, Mars, as I explained in those other videos, is visceral. It's alive. It's real. It's tangible. They appreciate things made with heart and soul. So Mercury, Venus, Mars loves to see, how do you make those pots? How are these musical instruments made? Appreciates, you might say, the old country where people did things with their hands, and they have the skill and sensitivity and the knowledge to know how to make that delicious food, how to build those beautiful buildings, the design, the architecture. It takes you back to the old country, you might say, not where everything's made of plastic and mechanical and just efficient, because Venus, Mars is visceral. And Mercury, Mars wants to understand it. Oh my goodness, how did they build whatever it was, when in Europe, when they made the aqueducts to transfer water or anything. So it's a person who's alive, always learning, curious, and intelligent. You're probably involved in things like writing, teaching, learning, those kinds of activities. Okay, so she's a Mercury, Venus, Mars person. It's fundamental. That's one thing we know about her. We know that it's so important that it should be a big part of her life. Okay, so second step, let's go back to our slide. See what vibration the midpoints are in. So to do this, let me just close this pop-up window, and let's go, let me also drag this back over here. Let me just bring up the wheel and resize this back to where we can see the whole wheel, because we'll be looking at wheels in a minute. Okay, we're going to go to step number 2, see what vibration the midpoints are in. We go to listings, harmonic patterns listings, number 8. Now this feature is only in Sirius. We don't have this in Kepler, because these unique features that are not found in any other program are generally only in Sirius. They're not in Kepler. So this direct midpoint structure, it'll go up to 128. I said earlier we wanted to get up to at least about 64, so this is great. Now let me just select it and you'll see what this is. Takes a few minutes to calculate. And there it is. It calculates, a few seconds to calculate. If something takes more than a second, it seems slow. It may take it a few seconds to calculate. And there it is. And what it's showing us is the direct midpoint structures in the chart, but we're only interested in this one, the Venus at Mercury, Mars, because this is the one with the small orb, 10-minute orb, and it tells us that it's a 24th harmonic, a 47th, and a 48th. Well, the 48 is just the next level of 24, 8 times 3 times 2. So it's a 47 and a 24, and it tells us 24 is 8 times 3. What this means is that in the 8th harmonic chart, the Venus, Mercury, Mars will appear as trines, because trine is 3. So it means in the 3rd harmonic, they appear as 8th harmonic aspects, and in the 8th harmonic chart, they appear as 3rd harmonic chart. Let me say it again. In the 8th harmonic chart, they appear as 3rd harmonic aspects. So if that sounded confusing, let me just make that simple. When you see the harmonic, you know that Venus, Mercury, Mars are vibrating to 24. What does 24 mean? Well, I made a series of videos on the meanings of the first 32 harmonics. 24 is an asset. It's something that's important that you can utilize. So she has a very fundamental Mercury, Venus, Mars pattern, and it's going to show up as trines in the 8th harmonic chart. Okay? So, again, you just look at those two numbers, and it means 3 is trine. It's going to be a trine in the 8th harmonic. And the 8th harmonic is one of the harmonics I'm going to look at, 8. So we're going to be aware that in the 8th harmonic, they will appear as trines. Now, let's look at the 8th harmonic chart. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to harmonic charts and select 8, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. Let's also do 17. So in Kepler and in Sirius, you can just separate these with commas. Now, there's the Mercury at 28 Leo, Venus at 26 Aries, and Mars at 26 Sag. There's the grand trine. So there's the Mercury, Venus, Mars. And now we're very sure that she can be a writer. She can be a teacher. She can figure things out, because this Mercury, Venus, Mars is powerful. The 8th harmonic is the basic driving force of the chart. It appears as a very strong grand trine. How do I know it's strong? Because the lines are thick. I don't even have to look at see what the orbs are. The lines are thick. It means it's strong. She's an extremely Mercury, Venus, Mars person. This means that her life should have Mercury, Venus, Mars as a major theme. That means learning, teaching, writing, understanding the arts, understanding what makes something beautiful, communicating about these things, arts, literature, even music. She needs to be involved in these things. She's got a lot of talent for these kinds of areas. Now we want to look at aspect patterns. Do you see anything? That's step number 3. Step number 3 is aspect patterns in harmonic charts 8, 5, 7, 9, 11. Well, we're already into this. We're into the 8th harmonic. Do we see a pattern? Notice that this grand trine has the moon opposite Venus, and it's what we call a kite. She has a kite pattern. So the Mercury, Venus, Mars also has the moon, and notice the moon-Venus opposition, extremely thick red line. Moon is a 26 Libra 12. Venus is a 26 Libra 06. Extremely close aspect. So the moon is closely involved with this. Very tightly opposition Venus. Very tightly sextile Mars, which is extremely strong sextile. And Mercury is involved in this pattern. There's that weak sextile. All the aspects of this kite are within an orb. What does it mean to bring the moon into this? If you go back to the videos where I talk about the meanings of the planets, moon is the past reflected into the present as moods, memory, soul. Moon, Venus is very personal feelings. This gives a interest in the soul, the memories, psychology, feelings, moods. So this writing, this verbal intelligence is closely involved with a soul level, a depth level. So she's writing about myths. She's understanding myths, psychology, history, culture. So these are the things that she should be involved with. The beauty of this is that it's not just a symbolic language or a possibility. With an extremely strong pattern like this, this must be part of her life. And Moon, Venus, there must be kindness, a feminine quality. This happens to be a female. So it's a feminine quality in a female's chart. And so there's a sweetness, a kindness, a gentleness, a distaste for violence, a distaste for aggression. Those kind of things, are very, they would make her ill. Nobody likes aggression or violence, but she reacts very, very strongly to it. Also notice she has a T-square. Here's another pattern. Moon, Venus, Saturn. And notice these lines are strong. And if you look at the degrees, Saturn's at 24 degrees. Moon, Venus, Saturn. What does that mean? Well, Saturn gives a quiet. Moon Saturn is inclined to be more introverted, more quiet, humble, sincere, not flashy. So this isn't flashy with a lot of pizzazz and glamour. There's a quiet, there's humility, there's a pulling away, a liking to be alone with nature, a liking to be alone, maybe drinking tea, reading a good book, writing, sharing with good friends. So there's a contemplative and a mature sincerity involved here, and responsibility. So she's loving and she's responsible. She gets very upset and very distraught if people are superficial or glamorous or ignoring what's really important. She wants to really be there. She wants to be there for children, for people in need. So she could be a good counselor as well. And she has a good sense of artistic design. Whenever you see Venus Saturn, people think Saturn's bad, but actually it gives a sense of what's important in the design. Good sense of, she could be a good web designer because of her verbal intelligence and knowing what's important. So those are some of the fundamental things that should be involved in her life. She also has a Sun, Uranus, Pluto. In other videos on harmonic charts, I talk about orbs, but she has a Sun, Uranus, Pluto. It spreads 9 degrees in the harmonic chart, which means it's solidly there. Sun, Uranus, Pluto. And it looks like Sun is right in between the Uranus and Pluto, which reinforces it. And also, let's go back to the natal chart. I'll click over here, and let's look at the Sun, Uranus, Pluto. What it is her Sun is at 13 Taurus 40. Pluto's at 14 Leo 10. Very strong square. And Uranus is over here at 28 Gemini, and it's semi-squared to both. So it's 45 degrees. She has a Sun, Uranus, Pluto pattern. And if we look at the midpoints, there's that Uranus at Sun, Pluto 1 degree orb. We didn't pay much attention to that Uranus at Sun, Pluto because the orb was about 1 degree. But it's also, when we look at the wheel, in hard aspect, and in the 8th harmonic chart, it shows up as all of them conjunct. Now, if you're having a little trouble following this, I have a series of videos on how to interpret harmonic charts. You can watch that series of videos. Series of videos on the meanings of harmonics up to 32. A series of videos on the meanings of the planets and planetary aspect, planetary combinations, pairs of planets. If you look at all that stuff, then you'll be able to follow what I'm saying very easily and with no problem. So what does it mean to have Sun, Uranus, Pluto? You guys already know. You're students of astrology. She's independent. So on top of everything else, we know she's a highly independent, free-spirited person, goes her own way, doesn't like to be stuck in a controlled environment. She doesn't like an authority telling her what to do all the time. She's a bit of a free spirit and independent person. So we know 2 vitally important things. We know about her verbal intelligence, soulfulness, which soulfulness would mean it brings into history, mythology, psychology, soul level of understanding, huge, with deep feelings and sincerity, and she's a free spirit and an independent person. So obviously, if she grows up in where she's being highly controlled, that's not going to work. Her relationships with other people have to allow for a lot of freedom, and etc. Okay. All right. And we'll also notice that the Saturn and Neptune are making trines to this Sun, Uranus, Pluto. So Saturn, Neptune, if we look at it more closely, Neptune is closely trined Uranus, Saturn closely trined Pluto. So Saturn, Neptune we talked about as the sincere pursuit of spiritual interests, tend to be cynical of superficiality. So there's a sincerity here about the spiritual path. She really wants to be helpful and good to people, not too glamour oriented. And we'll have some trouble with any kind of excessive exaggeration, corporations that are saying that they're for the good of all but are greedy, or individuals, or hypocrisy, very sensitive to these things, and breaking free from the old way. So these are some of the basic themes. We're getting a feeling this could be a kind of a new agey person. Of course, people who come for astrology readings often are, or astrology information. So I met this person who was involved in an online astrology program. So we're not surprised. Independent, high verbal intelligence, soulfulness, mythology, history, sincerity about spiritual path. Now we'll look at the other harmonics. We look at harmonic 5 and we just see if there are strong patterns. We see some quincunxes here. Her sun and moon are in a 5 vibration. And look how tight they are, half a degree. And they're making a connection to Jupiter. So we usually want 3 planets, but here we have it, the sun and moon connected to Pluto, also in a separate kind of pattern connected to Jupiter. We don't usually combine different colors like red and brown. So we've got sun, moon with Pluto, sun, moon with Jupiter. And anytime you see the sun and moon, those are the 2 most important objects out there. So she's also creative. She's also exploring. Combined with her sun, Uranus, Pluto, and her high verbal intelligence, we know that she's a creative, inventive person exploring. So she should be writing, appreciating creative works, things like that. Not the kind of person who can be involved in a regimented, very rigorous and repetitive type situation. So if she went to school and it was very repetitive and kind of sterile, would drive her crazy. Okay. She's also got a Venus, Neptune, Jupiter. You see this thin red line coming from Venus to Jupiter. And in the 5th harmonic, that appreciates high creative quality. So she's sincere, but she appreciates rich. She might like, for example, large canvases, large oil paintings, large expressive pieces, because this is the harmonic of 5, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune. Okay, there's some other little things here, but it's kind of spreading. This Mercury, Pluto is together, Jupiter, Uranus together, but not all of them tightly connected. Let's just see if we see any other large patterns. In the 7th harmonic, a very clear pattern, Moon, Mercury, Neptune. In the series of videos on harmonic charts, I talk about orbs, but you can see that this Mercury-Neptune line is a little bit thin, but it's there. It's not extremely thin like these squares, or even thinner. And this is very thick, and the Mercury-Moon is close. So she has a Moon, Mercury-Neptune. It's solidly there. Moon, Mercury, Neptune in 7th harmonic is very soulful, tends to mythology, astrology, ancient poetry, because the 7 is steady, deep. Moon, Mercury, Neptune. This is a poet, a mystic, a mythologist, those kind of things. With the Moon, Mercury, Neptune, it's a very clear and solid pattern. And 9th harmonic, we see Mars, Neptune aspecting Venus, Uranus. Venus, Uranus in 9th harmonic connects sexuality to babies, because sex makes babies, and Venus, Uranus in 9th are the rhythms of nature, the rhythms of life. So romance is also nurturing and family oriented. Mars, Neptune is visionary about this. So this is a person who's inclined to be pagan or love the Divine Mother. Doesn't matter whether this is a female. Wouldn't matter whether it's a female or a male. But when you see Venus Uranus in ninth, it means rhythms of nature, rhythms of flow, rhythms of sexuality that brings birth. Mars Neptune is a dream, a vision, and the Mars Neptune is connected to the Venus Uranus. So a dream or vision about the rhythms of nature, the rhythms of the Divine Mother, the sexuality giving birth. So she should be involved with children. I found out she has children. I think it was 4 children, I think. Or 2, I can't remember. Anyway, she has children, and that's great because that's wonderful. And she is an astrologer. She is a tarot card reader. Let's go back to the 7th harmonic. Moon, Mercury, Neptune, tarot card reader, astrologer. She's a life coach. Mars, Neptune with Venus, Uranus. She works with bringing out the feminine energies in people. There it is. There's the fundamental important themes in her life right there in the chart. Very, very clear. Let's look at the 11th harmonic. We see a Venus, Jupiter, Pluto. 11th harmonic is about hunger, dynamic, Venus, Jupiter, Pluto. There's something going on here about transforming her sense of well-being and sense of wealth. There's also, I won't go into that in any more detail, but I see a grand trine here. Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune. Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune is the priest or priestess. It's the clergy person, the minister. In a grand trine in the 11th means that she's a progressive minister, you could say. She had some interest in the ministry. So whenever you see Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, it's a form of ministry. Saturn, Neptune means what's really important in life, and Jupiter is how to get there. So they're directors, coaches, life coaches, often ministers and priests. Now, a lot of people don't actually become literally ministers and priests, but they're inclined to that kind of lifestyle and that kind of work, and that's what she does. And then lastly, let's look at the 13th Moon, Mars, Uranus in the 13th. This is transformative. This is transforming your emotions, because 13 is going beyond, becoming exceptional. It spreads 8 degrees, the Moon, Uranus, very strong, and Pluto comes in, giving some compulsive energy. This is about emotional transformation. So she probably works with people to transform their inner feelings and overcome their inhibitions and overcome any anger, things like that. And 17, we see all kinds of things moving around here. Nothing really pops out except Venus, Mars, Saturn. Sun, Mars, Saturn. Sun and Saturn tell you about a career. It's showing up here right on the 7th cusp. And if her birth time is highly accurate, this would reinforce the possibility of her being a counselor, possibly even a psychic. 17 shows compassion. Sun, Saturn is often our career. Again, we tend to think of Saturn as bad, but Saturn shows what we actually work on. We've done research on databases, and the Sun-Saturn correlates with what a person's actual work is. And if her birth time is highly accurate, and the Sun-Saturn's on the 7th cusp, opposite Mars, would indicate she's a person who finds out what's really going on with you. She intuitively senses what's going on underneath the surface. 17 has this ability to move into the awareness of other people. So that would be involved. And that's also, I think her birth time is highly accurate because that's what she does. All right. Well, it took me a half hour. We're at 35 minutes here to describe all this, but I'm teaching it to you as well. If you were doing this as a quick reading, you would just go in, you would see the midpoint structures, and you don't labor over it like I did here in teaching mode. Let me give you a feeling for it. I look at her chart. I look at the midpoints. Oh, she's a writer. She's a Mercury, Venus, Mars. She's a vital person. And I just pull up this other listing, and I see that it's in 24, which is a very basic and fundamental harmonic. So I'm clearer about it. Then I see the 8th harmonic. The moon comes in. It's a soulfulness, a verbal intelligence about history, psychology. So I figured maybe she's a psychologist. Maybe she's a writer of stories about people. Maybe she understands the heritage of people, their lives, as you know, as families, as communities. And then I see the 7, and I see the moon, Mercury, Neptune. Now I see it takes on a mythic level, a soul level, a possibly the tarot cards, astrology, and then so on. I don't see that much in the 5th. I see the 9th, working with women, with birth, things like this. 11th, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, possibly a life coach, new age person. 13, emotional transformation. 17, ability to see underneath the surface of things. So you will just see these patterns, come up with quick ideas. When you know the meanings of the harmonics, you know the meanings of the planets, it comes together very, very quickly. It doesn't seem like it now because it's all new to most of you, but that's how it works, and that's how you do a quick reading. And again, the 3 steps. Direct midpoint. Whoops, sorry. I clicked and it changed the page. Direct midpoint structures, what vibration are they in? And look at the harmonic charts and just look for 3 planet patterns, especially in the same color where the lines are thick. So there's that moon, Mercury, Neptune. And don't overlook the conjunctions. They're easy to overlook because you don't see a big line going across the wheel. But that moon, Mercury is very, very important, even though you can overlook it. So don't overlook those conjunctions. And then when a 3rd planet aspects that conjunction is very important. Okay, my friends, that's how we do a quick reading. I will make some videos on other quick readings, and in the other videos I won't spend as much time going over the basic concepts. This first video I did that, and the other videos will move through more quickly and show how we see the fundamental things in the person's life. We have described many of the fundamental things in her life. Oh, I forgot to show you this. Here are my notes. She has 2 websites, does astrological counseling, tarot card readings, works on dreams, writes mythic stories. It's amazing. The vibrational astrology will tell you actually the issues that are going on in the person's life. Here's something that I wrote about her, and you can pause this. I've already talked about this if you want to read all that. So the conclusion, she has 4 children. She campaigned against a Walmart opening in her town. She is the witch in the neighborhood, so to speak. Campaigning against Walmart opening in her town is very descriptive of the Venus-Mars, the Sun, Uranus, Pluto, and the 8th harmonic. She is now considering enrolling in the 2.5-year program at Avalon in vibrational astrology. She pointed out that she's more of an imaginer than an analyzer. True. However, she did start as a math major in college, changed her major. Math major, well, she is smart. She has that Mercury, Venus, Mars is a high IQ person. And there must be something else that inclined her to math. I don't know what it was, but she is more of an imaginer, but she's smart. She wants to understand how things work, that Mars involved with the Mercury and Venus. And vibrational astrology does not require much math anyway. It is especially exciting for people who like astrology to be evidence-based. Anytime you see Mars and Saturn involved in big patterns, Mars, they want to really get it, go there. Saturn, they want to get to the essence and figure it out. And doesn't everyone with a smiley face at the end? I think if you really think about it, regardless of the astrology, we like things to work and make sense. And so VA, with all of the research and development that's gone on, it's a practical, useful tool. Okay, my friends, I hope that helps get an idea of how we do quick readings using vibrational astrology. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.